Welcome to Trustworthy AI Empowers Diversity in Tech. My name is Kate Schmidt. I'm a senior manager at Deloitte Consulting, and I lead our Deloitte AI Institute. I'm really excited to be talking to you about this today because I don't think we talk about this topic enough. But before we get into it, I want to talk to you about sort of where this all started and sort of what the state of AI is today. So we on an annual basis put out a report called The State of AI in the Enterprise, where we survey over 2,600 business leaders across the globe. And what we found in our most recent report, and it just launched in October, was that 94% of business leaders that were surveyed said that AI was going to be critical to their organization's success over the next 5 years. Critical, right? And this is across the globe. So they're all really agreeing that AI is here, that it's important. It's no longer that shiny object. It's no longer the Arnold Schwarzenegger robots, right? It is truly fueling innovation and competitive advantage. And we're seeing this across the globe. And in addition to that, 76% of the leaders that we surveyed plan to increase their investments in AI in the next fiscal year. And they're doing this in a couple different ways. So the one that stands out the most there is around they're looking at it to reduce costs and improve efficiencies. They're also looking to AI to help differentiate their offerings, creating new products and new services, generating new revenue opportunities and new revenue streams, and then finally improving customer experience and partner experience. So it's clearly an important technology that's going to take us into the future. It's how I found this ballroom today on my phone. We're all using AI on a daily basis, and large enterprise organizations are using it as well. So, but why does all this matter? So despite the surging demand for AI across the globe, we still have an issue with diversity and women and gender parity in AI today. So in 2020, the World Economic Forum came out with a report that said that while women make up 47% of the total workforce, they make up only 26% of the data in AI positions in the workforce, only 26%. Stanford put out a report last year in 2021 talking about the fact that women make up only 16% of the tenure track faculty focused on AI globally. So meaning that not only are we 26% of the data in AI positions are being filled by women, but our pipeline of getting women into AI positions is also lacking, right? Another stat which is just astounding, which is that the percentage of Black and Latinx employees in major tech companies are also especially low, about 1% to 3% of the tech workforce. So that diversity we are not seeing across AI development or tech in general. And then to top it all off, diversity is also lacking among entrepreneurs and venture capitalists who are investing in the new AI products and the new AI solutions that are coming to the market. So we've sort of established that, right, that leaders believe that AI is the future. We know this is a rules-based system. AI can learn and grow just like humans can learn and grow. But we still have this sustained diversity gap, and we're still seeing a pipeline of that diversity gap that's going to continue, right? So how do we address it, and why does this matter, right? So I think why does this matter is where I want to start. So today there's evidence that reinforces that gender diversity, particularly in leadership positions, are driving productivity and profitability and market value for organizations across industries, right? So not just within AI, and I'll get to where it comes into AI. But Goldman Sachs did a study that showed that diversity on executive boards actually increased average share prices by 44%. That's huge. Just bringing more diversity, more women, more minorities to their boards increased their share prices by 44%. That diverse thinking is just helping us think through other problems, other scenarios, think through other solutions that maybe we couldn't have come to with a kind of a homogeneous approach. Diverse executive leadership has yielded higher returns in certain markets than companies that have not committed to gender diversity. So just in general, we're seeing that companies that are thinking about, that are bringing diversity into their executive leadership teams and as opposed to the others that are not, it's not creating that kind of impact. And then Harvard Business Review came out with a study that said in Western Europe, a 10% increase in the ratio of women to men actually in the workforce correlated to a 7% increase in market value, right? So we're seeing this across the globe where diversity, not just in AI, but in business, matters. We need diverse thinkers in order for us to really grow. And I put a lot of numbers into these slides because I know AWS loves numbers, and the numbers are really showing it. So we're saying the data is showing that companies with diverse cultures are fueling productivity, right? They're bringing more innovation into their workforces, which is translating into more competitive advantage. And in order to build and to design and to deploy really effective AI systems, the AI team that is designing and building and deploying these systems needs to be as diverse as the populations that it's going to impact. And I'm going to talk a lot about why this matters. But in addition to our State of AI survey, we also did a separate survey to get a sense for what is that state of women and diversity in AI today, right? So we surveyed around 200 men and women working in AI and data roles and asked them some questions about what's happening today. Why is there such a gender parity issue? Why don't we have more diversity in AI today? And it was really interesting. So you'll see some of these stats, and some of them seem obvious, but they're also very declarative, I think. So 71% said that adding women in AI and machine learning positions is going to bring unique perspectives to the tech industry that maybe we didn't have before. They also, 66% of them agreed that having AI and machine learning solutions would benefit from having more diverse employees in development and in designer positions. And then this one is really a really strong sentiment. So 63% of them believed that AI and machine learning models would always produce biased results as long as AI continues to be a male-dominated field. Always, right? So we're really, and that bias and having bias in those systems really kind of connects to the importance of having diversity in AI, which is directly connected to one of the challenges that we have with AI, which is around establishing trust, right? And that goes to our Trustworthy AI framework. There's a lot of sentiment out there, and I would say, as we've done our State of AI in this survey 5 years ago, when we surveyed leaders, they were concerned about the risks that followed AI. Employees were concerned about AI taking over their jobs and taking over their roles. Those are all trust concerns, right? There's a lot of concerns out there with regards to privacy. How's my data being used? How is it not being used? Can I opt in? Can I opt out, right? Those are all trust issues. And in order for AI to be successful, we need our stakeholders, we need our customers, we need our employees to trust the results that the AI models are delivering, right? And having a more diverse workforce is better equipped to identify and remove AI biases as they interpret data, to test solutions, to make decisions, and to lead to more responsible and accountable AI. So what we did at Deloitte was we created this Trustworthy AI framework, which is really gives an organization that common language for talking about trust and talking about and thinking through the questions you need to ask yourself to understand whether or not the AI you have in your system is trustworthy. And I'll go around the pillars, and then I'll talk about a couple that really focus on diversity. But having this common framework throughout an organization to think through whether or not the AI you have in your organization is acting in a trustworthy way as it relates to your organization's overall mission and guidelines is key. And it can be supported by then regulatory compliance, and you'll see that diversity and equity and inclusion is an underpinning to all of this. So I'm going to drill into fair and impartial. And actually, I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about all 6 of these and then drill into a couple. So we believe that AI needs to be robust and reliable. And when I say robust, I mean that it can consider as many of the use cases that the AI model has out there and make sure that it's going to react in the way that you expect. And then reliable is creating consistent outputs from what you saw when you were testing to what you see in real life. AI systems, we believe, should protect privacy and customer privacy and should consider it and help customers opt in and opt out of their data being used. AI systems should be safe and secure from bad actors, secure from cyber threats, but also safe in a way that it's acting in a way that we as humans would want it to act. It should be responsible and accountable. There should be policies in place to make sure that the AI that you're deploying is responsible in a way that it's following your organization's mission, but then also that there's policies that can explain who's accountable for the actual output of the AI itself. And that it should also be transparent and explainable. I should know why the AI model made the decision it made and be able to explain it. I used to say, if I can explain it to my mother, then it's explainable, right? But if I can't, then somebody else, then we need to figure something out. And then finally, it should be fair and impartial. And this does not mean that we need to strive for completely unbiased, because I think we'll be working very hard for a very long time and we'll never quite get there because humans and data is inherently biased. But we should strive for as our AI to make the most fair and impartial decisions on our behalf as we possibly can. So I'm going to drill into a couple of these, and you're going to see how having diversity in these different spaces is really going to bring these to life, and how you actually really can't have trustworthy AI without diversity. So when it comes to fair and impartial, data is inherently biased. Humans are inherently biased, and we're not going to get away from this. We're not going to get around it, right? But we need to put in some of the guardrails and the policies in place and the actions in place in order to try to make sure that the data that we are working with and that the decisions that the AI is making on our behalf is as unbiased as it possibly can be so that it's not leading to unfair outcomes, right? So we should be looking for bias in the data and then trying to pull that out and solve for that. We can use synthetic data or oversampling so that we can actually sample more data than we initially would think that we need, just to try to minimize some of that bias. And then we need to engage a really strong set of stakeholders and a broad set of stakeholders so that we can sort of ask those questions. Do you think the results of the system are biased? Do you think that we're excluding some sort of socioeconomic or gender or race, right? So we need to kind of put all those things together and then collect that feedback and feed it back into the model so that we can try to make sure that things are fair and impartial. Unbiased is going to be something we will probably never get to, but as fair and as impartial as we possibly can be. Now, when it comes to robust and reliable, I like to tell the story of the Roomba. So do you guys remember the Roomba? It's that little vacuum that would go around and collect crumbs. It was always kind of cool, and you'd see cats on it, right, running around on it, which you're probably wondering, okay, so where's she going with this? How is this going to relate to robust and reliable? But there are stories that, the Roomba goes out there and it collects your crumbs. But with regards to robustness, several years ago, there were articles where the Roomba went through, and in Southeast Asia, many times people sleep on the floor. Also, Central America, where there isn't a lot of air conditioning, they sleep on the floor. And the Roomba actually went and started to vacuum up somebody's hair in Southeast Asia. And it was all over the news. So how does this lead to robustness? If we had built, or if the designers of the Roomba had a robust and a broad set of stakeholders that were reviewing all of the use cases that could be impacted by the Roomba, if there was somebody from Southeast Asia on that stakeholder group, they would have said, nope, the Roomba's not going to work here because it's going to vacuum up somebody's hair, right? And then they would have thought through, okay, so maybe we should create a use case that assesses whether or not the Roomba's picking up a crumb as opposed to picking up somebody's hair because they're lying down. If we had somebody from Southeast Asia on that Roomba committee, they would have figured that out, right? So robustness is all about really thinking through with a diverse set of stakeholders how all of the potential harms and good and bad that the AI models could be having to make sure that the solution is as robust as potentially possible. And then when it comes to reliability, we really want to focus on not just can it rely, like on an ongoing basis, can the AI system produce the same results within guardrails, right? But once I take it into real life and I'm using real life data, is it still on an ongoing basis creating those same results within those guardrails? And if it's not, do I understand why? And do I take that back and really research why the result was not what we thought? So how can we create robust and reliable systems? Well, we can create that broad swath of stakeholders that are going to review it and really come up with all of the use cases that should be tested for the AI system before it's deployed. But we can also establish those benchmarks for reliability to make sure that we have those guardrails in place to ensure that the results are reliable and ongoing. And then continuing to actually audit the data that the AI system is working up against and then monitoring the results over time. So the next one is around responsibility and accountability, which you are probably thinking, well, how is diversity going to play into this one? And there's actually a really good piece of it. So this one I like because I actually like to use the example of when it comes to responsibility, the example of Jurassic Park. So in Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum was a scientist at the time, and he asked the question. He said, well, I think the scientists were so consumed with determining whether or not they could build a dinosaur, they didn't actually start to think through whether or not they should. And for me, that's what responsible AI development is, right? Thinking through, should we actually deploy this? Not could we, right? And we all found out at the end of, if you guys have seen Jurassic Park, we all found out at the end of Jurassic Park that it probably wasn't the best idea for them to take dino DNA and put it into the amber, right? Because it didn't really turn out that well. And so responsible and accountable AI is really all about thinking about, is the AI that we're deploying responsible? Is it going to do any kind of societal harm? Is it going to do any kind of personal harm? Is it going to harm the environment? Thinking through all those scenarios before you deploy it and having a stakeholder community that can help you think through whether or not the AI that you're deploying in your organization is responsible and should we build it? And then putting in those policies and procedures in place to ensure that once the AI is deployed, that it is actually, that we know exactly who's accountable for the decisions that it's making. So asking yourself, should we build this? Leading with a strategy that is in support of your organization's mission, of your organization's values, right? To understand whether or not there's a true strategy in support of whether or not that AI is responsible and is aligned with your organization's strategy and values. Building that oversight committee that is diverse and can think about all of the potential harms that could happen once we deploy the AI, and then just thinking through that intentional diversity as it results to it, thinking through, should we deploy this versus can we, right? And so while there's several considerations for having trustworthy or for trying to ensure that there's trustworthy AI throughout your organization, diversity in design and development and oversight can have a direct impact on whether or not your AI ends up being responsible, accountable, and trustworthy. But what we're seeing is that even though we've made this point that AI is so important to our business leaders, 94% of them saying that it's critical to their success, that they're investing in it, we've established that we need diverse development teams, diverse design teams, diverse stakeholders in support of AI. We've established that having diverse leadership in place is going to drive, success and competitive advantage and increase profitability. We still have a diversity gap. So what's driving this? So in the survey that we did of the 200 men and women working in AI and data, we asked them, so why is this still here, right? All the things are pointing towards you will be more successful if you have diverse leaders, diverse designers, diverse developers, either leading your organizations or developing your AI, but we still have this gap, right? So women often face this is what we heard. We heard that women often face a continuous battle for credibility. So when they were interviewed, they felt like they constantly had to prove themselves as credible and experienced when interacting with their male colleagues. And this is all in the space of AI and data. We also found that there was a lack of a women archetype that can be damaging, right? So women are struggling to see that archetype that exists, that leader that they can aspire to be, that individual that they want to be in 10, 20 years. They're struggling to see somebody that looks like them in the AI and data field, right? So if you can't see what your success looks like, it's really hard to envision yourself there, right? Women leaders are also facing a discrimination of type, right? In terms of people are looking for leaders that have been successful in the past, right? So if there was a chief information officer, chief data officer, chief technology officer, and if all the chief technology officers of the past have been men and they were successful, let's put another man in that space, right? But is that really what we should be doing? Or could we bring more diverse thought to that leadership and not really go with what, the original mold already had? And then culture and social challenges still exist. So there are still some false stereotypes with boys and girls that exist, and the ideal that girls are not as capable as boys in math and science. And I actually think I've argued that you almost need a more diverse group of individuals supporting AI development. When I talked about that example of the Roomba, the individual that would have raised their hand to say, this Roomba is not going to work in Southeast Asia because we sleep on the floor and it's going to eat somebody's hair, that individual only needed to know that piece of information to make that AI more robust. They didn't need to know how the model worked. They didn't need to know the math or the science behind it, right? So I wrote a separate piece on how AI can actually open the doors for diversity, because I think you need to bring scientists and artists and historians. You need to bring, if you're building AI for an HR organization, you need to bring the individuals who do the recruiting to make sure that they understand it, right? So I think there's a really good argument to say that it doesn't just need to be individuals that are really focused on math and science. It doesn't need to be, girls can be in AI development that are not really focused on those areas, because you need all that diverse thinking in order to make your AI more robust and more responsible and inherently more trustworthy. So what is the solve? Because we've still got a big gap between diversity, a gender parity gap, and how do we create a path for the future? And some of these are going to sound a little bit obvious, but I think it's when you bring intentionality to some of these, to some of the concepts here, is really going to help us create that culture of diversity and inclusion at all levels, because we've seen at all levels that it's important. So having mentors is key, and this goes back to that archetype a little bit, right? So intentionally creating opportunities for mentorship for women, for minorities, so that they can feel that they're invested in, not just by an individual, but by an organization in general. So creating informal and formal mentorship opportunities to make sure that we can bring people through this pipeline and really get the diverse perspectives that is needed in AI and in AI development. And then embrace those many paths to AI, right? There's not just one path to AI. I literally was on a call with somebody this morning, and he went to Columbia University in New York. He majored in political science, and he's working on AI, right? Those two things normally you'd think are not aligned, but he's working on policy, AI policy as it relates to AI, right? So there are many paths to be able to work on AI. It is not just the data science path, and I think we need to embrace that and showcase it so that people can see that you don't have to be good at math in order to participate and in order to support creating robust, reliable, and trustworthy AI systems. Treat women and minorities equitably. So let's really, and this one seems like a no-brainer, but it's bringing that intentionality behind that treatment that is really going to, help support growing that pipeline of having diverse leaders in AI development. Build and showcase those archetypes of women and minorities in AI. So really think about, take the women and diverse members of your organization, showcase them, tell their stories, tell their journey, help them explain how they started, the pitfalls that they ran into, the challenges that they overcame, when they were passed up for an opportunity and how they changed that into something that's good, right? So just building some really intentionality of, not just creating that mentor, which is that, smaller conversation, but create a bigger conversation about it that really showcases these archetypes of women working in AI so that the next generation can foresee themselves in those positions in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And then provide opportunities for education early and often. So, there are little boys and girls are learning about so many things today. My son's in coding classes and he loves it. I've got nieces that are in coding classes and they love it. I think if you think back to 60 years ago when our parents were going through career choices, there are very few opportunities for women. You could be a teacher, you could be a librarian, or you could be a nurse pretty much a long time ago. And the opportunities are so much more today, but we've still got so much we need to do. So continuing to kind of providing that early education, involving women and minorities in STEM spaces and creating those archetypes so that girls can see themselves in what they could be. I remember being a little girl and learning about Sally Ride, and she was an astronaut. She was super good at math, right? A really accomplished astronaut. And I thought for a very long time I was going to be an astronaut too. But I did become an astronaut. I'm up here talking to you all. But if I hadn't seen Sally Ride as an astronaut, I never would have thought that was a possibility. So if our little girls don't see themselves as participating in AI, they're never gonna take on that challenge. So all of these things can really create a culture of diversity and inclusion and try to do it across the board. We saw that when we bring women and minorities into board positions, it's increasing productivity and profitability. We're seeing that if you can bring diverse development to AI development, it's just going to make your AI more robust and more fair. So try to do it down at the data scientist level and all the way up to the boardroom. And I'll kind of leave you with this, in addition to creating that culture and diversity at all levels. The title of this session was Trustworthy AI and how it empowers diversity in technology. I hope that you actually come away with the argument of the inverse, right? So I hope you come away in understanding we all want to build trustworthy AI. We all want to instill trust in our customers and our employees and our stakeholders. But in order to do so, diversity needs to power all of that. So diversity needs to empower the fairness. They need to empower the responsibleness. They need to empower the robustness. In order to have trustworthy AI in your organization, from the top down and the bottom up, diversity needs to be in place so that you can consider all of those use cases. You can avoid the Roomba situation, right? You can consider whether or not you should build the AI or the dinosaur or not. And diversity is the only way that we're going to empower that trustworthy AI by bringing it into your organization. Thank you.